So I am here today to talk about feeding the world. And Iowa has this amazing humanitarian legacy of feeding the world. And last week, in fact, we celebrated the 103rd anniversary of perhaps one of Iowa's greatest humanitarian heroes. And that person's Dr. Norman E. Borlaug. And so I'm here today to not only tell you about his story, but also tell you the story about some of Iowa's other great humanitarians in hopes that you will retell them as part of continuing our humanitarian legacy. So Dr. Borlaug was born on a farm in northeastern Iowa, just outside of Cresco. And after he received his PhD in plant pathology, he went down to Mexico in 1944 with tasks as a research scientist to improve wheat. And so he was there for over 2 decades, overcoming a series of obstacles to improve wheat cultivation in the country. And so by the time he was done with his work, he created wheat that was disease resistant, had potential for higher yields, and also could be grown in a variety of climates. And so because of his work, he is credited with saving over 1 billion lives, more than anyone who's ever lived. And in 1970, he received the Nobel Peace Prize for a lifetime of work dedicated to feeding a hungry world. Herbert Hoover was the 31st president of the United States, born in West Branch in eastern Iowa. But before he was president, however, he was tasked with feeding Belgium during World War I because it had been overrun by Germany. And so not only was he tasked with this, he took food aid over to Belgium, but then also to Central Europe, and then later to Soviet Russia. And when he was criticized for doing so, his response was, "Millions of people are hungry. Regardless of their politics, let them be fed." And so as a result of this work, he's credited, received world gratitude for being the great humanitarian. So one of my favorite stories about Iowa's humanitarian heritage is called the Iowa Hog Lift. And this story begins in 1959 in Yamanashi Prefecture in Japan, where the area was struck by 2 typhoons, which wiped out their animal husbandry. And so there was a U.S. Air Force Master Sergeant named Robert Thomas, who believed that his home state could help revamp the area's animal husbandry, particularly with hogs. And so partnering with Iowa farmers, Iowa ag leaders, as well as U.S. Embassy officials, they took 35 hogs from Iowa that were fed with Iowa corn over to the Yamanashi Prefecture. And these hogs, in 9 years, had 5,000 offspring and totally revamped the animal husbandry in that country, or in that prefecture. And so to thank us, Yamanashi sent, in this picture you'll see the bell that's in the upper left-hand corner. And this bell still stands south of the Capitol, on the Capitol grounds today. And so in 1993, when we had what's called our Great Flood of '93 here in Iowa, they sent drinking water to Iowa. And so today, because of these historical interactions, Yamanashi and Iowa are sister states today. So even though I was born in Iowa, raised in Iowa, I'm a Drake alum, I didn't know any of these stories until I began working at the World Food Prize Foundation, where we endeavor to highlight Iowans who've had this kind of humanitarian impact in feeding the world. And we also do this by uniting Iowans together every year during our Iowa Hunger Summit to encourage people to continue to fight against hunger here in Iowa. And we also do that through what's called our Iowa Hunger Directory, an online platform that seeks to profile every organization in the state that addresses hunger issues. And just a few of these examples, there's over 500 organizations there, and they're international organizations, they're educational entities like Drake University, and there are also community-based initiatives all over our state. And again, these dots are only a fraction of what's going on in Iowa today. So all these dots represent organizations like Share the Harvest. Share the Harvest is an organization that was started by Robin Stone in Manchester, Iowa. And she realized that many in her community were food insecure because they live in food deserts. And so beginning on no budget, she decided to do something about it and began reaching out to local farmers, asking them to donate excess produce. And so now she feeds over 120 people a week for 16 weeks out of the year. Also, there's organizations like Self-Help International, which is also run by an Iowan named Norma Tobin. And this organization has, as the name explains, has an international focus. And they seek to uplift small-scale, smallholder farmers in developing countries, and doing so in sustainable development ways, in a way that allows the farmers to maintain their dignity. Closer to home, here in Des Moines, there's also Children and Family Urban Movement. It's an organization that seeks to tap into the potential of children and young people by educational means and healthy living. And so as part of what they do, they have what's called breakfast clubs and supper clubs that feed kids during the summer at a time when they may not have access to healthy meals during the school year. And supper clubs alone feed 31,000 meals are served just during the summer as part of that program. Right here in Drake's backyard, there's Lutheran Services in Iowa, an organization, as many of you probably already know. But one of the aspects of what they do is their Global Greens program. And so when refugees are relocated here to Iowa, they're allowed land access to continue their agricultural practices. And in doing so allows them access to healthy food options that are cheaper, but also allows them to continue and educate others on their traditional agricultural practices. And so finally, right here at Drake, there's Next Course, an organization that has retrieved hundreds of pounds of food as part of Drake University's, as part of their What Happens to Cafeteria, but also events here at Drake, and I assume this one as well. But the food is then redistributed to families that need it the most here in Des Moines. So I tell you all these things to encourage you to make an impact and learn the stories of what's going on in your own community. And that can be as simple as liking a Facebook page. Share the Harvest, for instance, as of this afternoon, only has 41 likes on their Facebook page. And if everyone in this room and that attends this event today went and liked their Facebook page, that would double Robin's social media presence, which is the only presence that she has to talk about her organization online. So whatever you decide to do, I urge you and implore you to become a part of, learn, and retell the stories of Iowa's humanitarian heroes of past and present. Because in doing so, you are in a small but not insignificant way continuing the fight against hunger both in Iowa and around the world.